Every Thursday, after dropping my little sister off at her volleyball practice nearby, I pass through a series of narrow, curving roads. It's about a mile long, and it's undoubtedly the most dangerous road I've ever driven on. With little room for error, the slightest misdirection can lead to hitting an oncoming car, hitting a tree, or falling into the river. It's a dangerous road that serves little function other than a shortcut, so when drunk drivers inevitably enter the scene, you can imagine how things might turn out. And on my way home every Thursday, I always make sure to stop about midway through the road. Here, I exit my car and I walk towards this lone tree about 50 feet high, and I can't help but be silent. You can see the dead leaves all the way around the tree, but that alone is pretty insignificant. The story really starts when you look down at its bark. There, you can see, for lack of a better word, it's mutilated. It used to be a lot worse, but for now, it's still very damaged. And when I see that bark, I can't help but pray. Sometimes I have a conversation with him. Other times I just pray silently to myself. You can still see sometimes the sparkles of glass within the grass, and other times you can see parts of the car still around the tree. This is the story of the Taking Tree.
The Giving Tree is a short children's book written by Shel Silverstein, a controversial artist, in 1964. It's a story that details the life of a boy and a tree, two characters. It sounds simple, and I guess it is, but it's also one of the best, most important, beautiful, and sad books I've ever read. It feels far too short the first time you finish it, like maybe you missed something. You had to miss something, but later you realize the brevity is kind of the point of the whole thing. There isn't enough time. There never is. It's a bleak book with depressing undertones, often leaving the viewer sad and, because of its brevity, dismissive towards its themes. Now, people have argued about this book for decades. It's been ranked in both the top best and worst children's books of all time. Many hold a firm grasp on their hatred toward the book, calling it crude, horrible, and even sexist, while others maintain their love towards it. There is no correct way to read this book, and thus there is no right answer as to whether it's good or not. Despite that, both sides are equally valid. Throughout my research, I discovered something massive. The ambiguity of this book is what empowers it, because it reflects on the reader's lived experiences, sort of like an experiment. An experiment that reveals so much about one's own life, serving as a half glass empty or half glass full psychological examination. The short story is less like a story and more like a mirror. If you're in one place in life, the story shows beautiful sacrifices of unconditional love. But if you're in another, the story shows a destructive, toxic relationship. Despite the fact that The Giving Tree is a 5-minute long read made by a crude artist with scratchy drawings and depressing undertones, it's personally remained my favorite book of all time. It was the first book ever read to me, thanks Mom, and I apparently quickly fell in love. It's helped me understand so much about not only myself, but life as a whole. To catch you up to speed, I'll summarize the book as best as I can without losing any important details. In the beginning of the book, there's a boy and there's a tree. They love each other, just as a mother loves her child. They play countless games during his youth, and the narrator remarks that the tree was happy. But as the boy grows older, he spends less time with the tree. Whether that's because he has less time to spend with the tree, or because he's deliberately choosing not to spend time with the tree, remains ambiguous, and ultimately up to the reader, but the story continues. The boy, now a teenager, goes to the tree. The tree, ecstatic, asks the boy to play. The boy responds that he's too big to play and climb up the tree. He wants to buy things and have fun now. So the boy asks something that serves as the beginning of a parasitic relationship. Can you give me some money? The tree apologizes as it has no money, but seemingly in an act of desperation to spend time with the boy, she offers up her apples for the boy to sell and thus make money. So the boy climbs up, an act that he had just said he was too big to do, and takes the apples. And for a second time, the narrator ends the page with the same sentence. And the tree was happy. The boy leaves and doesn't come back for years, and because of this, the tree was sad. Now an adult, the boy comes back. The tree shakes with joy, as if she needs a boy in order to function and be happy. She pleads for the man to play with him. He says he's too busy to play, and that he needs a house for his family. The tree offers up her branches for the man to build a house out of, adding at the end that this will then make him happy. The man accepts. The man does not play with the tree or ask how she's been. Nothing. Despite all of that, again, the tree was happy. Again, though, the boy stayed away for a long time. He was now an old man, slouched and grumpy looking, and when he came back, the tree was so happy she could hardly speak. Come, boy, she whispered. Come and play. I'm too sad and old to play, said the boy. I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat? Cut down my trunk and make a boat, said the tree. Then you can sail away and be happy. And so the boy cut down the tree, leaving nothing but a stump of what she once was. He made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy. ... But not really. This line serves as the climax of the story. When I talked to others about this book, they actually thought that this was the ending of it. This 3-letter sentence struck such a nerve that the final pages were just a blur. This is the first time the narrator admits something that the reader already thinks, that love is indeed real, but it can very much so ruin you. Does this mean then that we have an unreliable narrator? I don't think so, personally. We, as the reader, are at the mercy of the narrator. For all we know, this entire story could be from the perspective of the tree and not some third-person omniscient narrator. We simply don't have enough information to determine if the narrator is telling the truth the whole time or not. So going forward, the only option we have is to trust the narrator fully. Even if it seems unrealistic that the tree has been happy this entire time until this given moment, we just have to trust that the tree truly felt this way. The next page, the final chapter of the boy's life, shows him as a skinny, almost stick-like figure of what he once was. The low energy and exhaustion seemingly emanates out of the page, not just from the boy, but also from the tree. The old man approaches the tree. Before he even says anything, the tree apologizes. I'm sorry, boy, but I have nothing left to give you. I'm sorry, said the tree. I wish I could give you something, but I have nothing left, it sighed. I am just an old stump. I am sorry. The old man replies that he doesn't need very much now, just a quiet place to sit and rest. He's very tired now. The tree straightens herself up as much as she can, offering herself up one final time for the boy to sit and finally rest on her stump. And the tree was happy. The end. That's it. That's The Giving Tree. A boy takes from a tree until it's reduced to almost nothing, and somehow the final sentence still tells us she was happy. It's either a beautiful story or a horrifying story, and there is no in between. As you can probably expect, the controversies towards this book are seemingly never ending. Some people remark that it encourages toxic relationships. Others remark that it's far too sad to be a story meant for children. But what I want to focus on is its theme, something the author, Shel Silverstein, would hate me for doing. Shel Silverstein, famous for his secluded lifestyle and hatred towards commenting on his books, only ever said 2 things about this book, his most famous work. It's just a relationship between 2 people. One gives and the other takes. It has a pretty sad ending. And I didn't start out to prove a message. It started out to be a good book for a kid. I imagine it reflects my ideas, but it is for children. I'd like adults to buy it and read it, and I hope they can find enough in it. We can glean something massive from this, that this book outlines the relationship between a parasite and its host, so to say, and the dangers that come from the host's end. How the parasite takes and takes and takes until there is nothing left to even prove of its existence, except a fraction of its former self. Was it the boy's constant wants that led to the tree's downfall, or was it the tree's lack of self-respect that destroyed it? Whether the tree's own destruction was self-inflicted or because of the boy, the tree's full potential was, nonetheless, a splinter in time, never grown to its full capacity. The wood splintering out of the tree is a brutal reminder of what he went through that day. I will never know definitively how he felt when he drew his final breaths. I will never know what was going through his mind in the moments leading up to it. What I do know, though, is that Harry was a good kid. He didn't deserve this end, and neither did the tree. Pointing fingers as to who's at fault is not what I intend on doing. That's a game that I don't want to play, and that's not a game that Harry would want us to play either. Let me tell you a little bit about Harry.
Harry was the first impression I had of high school. Right there, actually. I remember looking at him and just feeling both a sense of comfort and awe. I mean, this man was twice my size, but he looked like the sweetest person ever at the same time. It was freshman orientation, and for icebreakers, we began talking about our families. The topic of fatherly figures was brought up, and he looked sad. His dad had recently passed away at that moment, but he never lingered on it. I remember him just kind of giggling about it after the mood went down. He said he missed him, of course, but that he's a new man and is able to keep living despite what he's been through. It was honestly really, really inspiring to see the strength he had. Harry fought through his own internal battles in the coming months. The details are between me, him, and his family, so I won't get into it, but he and I stayed in touch following his departure from my school. What I understood more and more about him through our conversations and his public Snapchat posts was that he had formed an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I have vivid memories of talking to him about it. He understood it was an issue and actively worked against it, but obviously it was much more complicated than that. One of the last conversations we had was about him going to rehab for a while, and how he had an overall positive experience. So he had quit his intake of alcohol. I was happy with that answer, satisfied even, but most of all, I was happy for him. He had made such a stride in the right direction, even after going through so much. Truthfully, I don't know how that conversation ended. I think that's because I never thought it'd be our last.
What had to be only a month later, the news was broken to me, and it broke me. I was 100 miles away from where it happened, and yet all the TVs still blared the news. A haunting reminder of how tiny the world really is, how you can never truly escape. My mind flooded every time I saw the news. How was I supposed to know this would happen? How was I supposed to react? How could I have prevented this? Above all my other feelings, though, I was angry. God, at life, at me. He was a friend to me, a buddy, and someone to lean on. And now he's gone. Forever. I always had the chance to tell him I loved him, and I never did it. Not even once. I never had the chance to say goodbye either. The details regarding his passing were grim, but out of respect for both him and his family, the details are ultimately not important for this video. All you need to know is that a devastating accident occurred during the night after a car he was in hit a tree. I was devastated. My friends were devastated, and the community as a whole was devastated. So when I inevitably drove past the tree that following Thursday, all those emotions flooded over me. The wreck site was still very, very much so visible. I had placed my anger onto the tree that killed him, of all things. Not the alcohol, although I was mad at that. Not at the system as a whole, but at the tree. I began thinking irrationally, things like, why was it planted here? Of all places, it's an out-of-place, unsafe obstruction. I had just finished rereading The Giving Tree for my, at the time, 6-year-old sister the morning of. So when I stood at the wreck site, I remember thinking that this was like the exact opposite of what the Giving Tree was. This was the tree that took my friend's life. This was the taking tree. I got home and reread the book to myself, this time with a newfound hateful and sad perspective. I noticed I no longer saw the book's tree as a mother or as nature or as a symbol of unconditional love, or whatever metaphor people like to attach to it. I saw a tree that stood there while the boy fell apart, an irresponsible, selfish tree that became the place where the boy's life likely ended. And I know how irrational all of this sounds. I know how irrational it sounds. to assign morality to a tree of all things, to look at bark, branches, sticks, and roots, and see a murderer. The tree did nothing. I mean, it didn't choose where it wanted to be planted, it didn't drink, and it certainly didn't drive. The tree was just there. That's the worst part. It was just there. That's what made it so easy to point fingers at, because when there's no clean, direct answer, the human mind just sort of grabs at whatever's left and blames what's still standing. And the tree was still standing. Harry wasn't. So for a long time, I hated it. I hated passing it. I hated the way it reminded me of Harry every time, of the fear he must have felt, of the pain he must have been in. I hated how the rest of the road just kept going on, and there was no memorial, like nothing had even happened there in the first place. Cars continue to take the curve too fast. People will still drink and drive here and in other places. And when I passed it in the afternoon and saw the sun hit the pine needles and long grass in a beautiful, objectively serene way, it just felt insulting. The fact that all of that happened and yet beauty still persisted, I saw that as an insult. It felt so wrong that the world could keep producing beauty in the same place it had produced such horror. That something so ordinary could happen somewhere so unordinary, if that makes sense. I was so deep in my own grief that I saw the beauty of life as a stab at me. When the boy comes back to the giving tree, much older, he asks to build a boat to sail away. It is notable to mention that the old boy is described as too sad now. He just wants to escape. I couldn't have related more to the old boy. After Harry died, so did my will to keep going. And what I mean by that is that I just wanted to escape. My previous life experiences might have helped me find somewhere new to escape to, but the roots were still embedded within that imaginary boat I'd made. Everything led me back to my roots no matter how far I tried to sail away. And so I began to see life as a series of mundane, absurd moments that ultimately meant nothing. I went through the motions of life for months, even years after Harry died. I woke up, went to school, confidently answered questions incorrectly, laughed when someone made a joke, drove home, ate dinner, wrote, played video games, and then I slept. And I did it again and again and again. None of it felt, even in the slightest, real. Grief, at least from the outside, can look incredibly boring. Movies usually picture it super histrionically, crying on the floor and screaming on your knees, pleading with God. But for me, my grief looked like just brushing my teeth and realizing the person I missed the most is dead, or sitting in class while everyone talked and just feeling like I'm a spectator in my own life, unable to commentate or make any reasonable difference. I no longer understood life. It was simply absurd to me. Any relationship I made could just be stripped away without a moment's notice. If I made that sound at least somewhat wise at all, that's not at all what my intention was. That perspective of life was really, really terrifying and extremely unhealthy. I thought most of all that if life could keep going after something like that, life was both absurd and cruel. The fact that the world and people around me continued became proof in my mind that the world did not care. Now, these last few minutes have been quite heavy, so I want to take a sharp left turn to Sisyphus. That's right, we went from my best friend dying to the giving tree to absurdism to Sisyphus. I promise this all ties back into something greater, but you need to stick with me for now. Sisyphus, if you didn't know, is this guy from Greek mythology who is condemned to roll a boulder up a hill forever, only for it to roll back down every time he reaches the top. It's one of the most horrifying punishments ever imagined because its repetitiveness is more cruel than violence itself. It's the same thing over and over and over with no finish line in sight, or at all, really. Sisyphus will never get to wipe the sweat off his forehead and say, I did it. He just has to keep pushing forever. At first, this sounds like hell, and it is hell, but Albert Camus, in one of the most famous lines in philosophy, boldly claim that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Especially now, I really don't like to admit this because of how much it means to me today, but I used to hate that line. I thought it was trying way too hard to make endless suffering sound somewhat poetic. Like, okay, sure, imagine him happy, but why? What is joyful about pushing a rock forever? What is happy about repeating that same task every day, every second? And then that line of thought led me to just saying that again. What is happy about repeating the same task every day? What is happy about life, about passing the same tree every Thursday and remembering again that someone you loved is not here anymore? Sisyphus is not happy because a boulder suddenly lost some weight or because a hill got smaller and had an ending point. Sisyphus is happy because at some point the boulder and his entire situation became his. The gods can control the cruel and unusual punishment, sure, but they can't control what it means to him. They can force him to push and push, but they can't force him to hate every second of that pushing. I mean, they can't even force him to hate it at all. That is the only thing he's in control of, his emotions. Somewhere in that endless repetition, Sisyphus takes back the only freedom he has left. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, because that is all Sisyphus has left. Every Thursday is that boulder I have to push. Every Thursday I pass the road and remember. And every Thursday I'm dragged back into my 15-year-old self hearing those news again, feeling blood rush to my ears and cheeks, feeling my chest cave in and trying to comprehend everything. I begged my parents for others to take my sister to volleyball practice, but they always told me to just take another way. But I would always cut it too short on time, and I'd always have to take that shortcut. I hated the tree because it was my boulder sitting at the bottom of the hill, waiting for me again, taunting me. But somewhere along the way, on some random Thursday, I passed it and did not feel immediate hatred. Another Thursday, I noticed the beautiful sunlit grass before I noticed the tree. And another Thursday, I smiled when I thought about Harry's laugh before I thought about the accident. And eventually, I realized the tree had not changed at all. My reactions weren't because the tree was slowly healing. In fact, it hadn't healed it much at that point, but my reactions were because I was slowly healing. I was the one who was changing. That is why the giving tree matters so much to me. It changes meaning so much. Just a few months ago, I hated the tree, but now it was different. The giving tree does not have one clear meaning. The book changes depending on the person reading it. It changes significantly depending on what you've lost, what you regret, what you need, what you fear, what you're willing to call love, etc., etc. When I was little, I saw it as a story about unconditional motherly love, but when Harry died, I saw the book through the lens of a real tree that I believed had been responsible for taking my friend from me. In Harry's absence, I turned the giving tree into the taking tree, because that was the only version of the story I was capable of reading at the time. And that's what grief does. It rewrites the entire world. It even rewrites stories you once loved and molds them with new meanings. That's what it did for me with the giving tree. But now, almost 4 years later, I don't think that the tree is a taking tree anymore. Or at least I don't think it is only that. I think it still is a giving tree, in a sense, just not in the sweet and simple way I understood it as a child. This tree provides shade, oxygen, and gives life to the squirrels that likely live within it and the grass that surrounds it. But most importantly, the tree never stopped being alive after what happened there. The wind still moves through its branches, the river still runs beside it, and its bark is still slowly healing day after day after day. The tree never changed, though. I did. Grief tends to rewrite things. It rewrites places, memories, stories, and even people. It turned the giving tree into the taking tree for me, because that was the only way I knew how to read it at the time. I needed something to blame, something still standing. But now, almost 4 years later, when I stop there, I don't see a tree that murdered someone anymore. I just see a tree. A wounded one, sure, but still standing and still healing through the storms, winters, and all the ordinary Thursdays in between. And maybe that's what Camus meant when he said one must imagine Sisyphus happy. The boulder never disappears. You just eventually stop expecting it to. You keep pushing it anyway. You keep driving the road anyway. You keep living anyway. Every Thursday, I still pass that tree. And every Thursday, honestly, it still reminds me of Harry. But not how he died. It reminds me of how he lived.